Welcome to the Live Like Eden podcast. I'm your host, Lindsay, and I'm thrilled that you're here. Years ago, out of nowhere, I found myself in a radical shift in consciousness that took me over 20 years to fully wrap my head around. Yes, that's right. It took me a long time, and without any warning, down the rabbit hole of darkness I went. Now I'm here to share with you all the insights of awakening, spirituality, health, the energetic world we're living in, and my absolute favorite topic, just how crazy the ego mind can be. These subjects are designed to help you understand the awakening process, to open your mind, and prepare you for your own unique spiritual journey toward inner peace. So I invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy today's discussion. Before we get started with today's show, I want to share with you something I've been working on. I have created a quiz just for you to see where you are on your own unique spiritual path. Everybody loves a quiz, right? You can go to my website at livelikeeden.com, click on the quiz pop-up, and answer 10 quick questions. You'll get an immediate response emailed to you with your results, a personalized podcast playlist including 5 Live Like Eden episodes that will offer you assistance where you currently are. And I've also thrown in a few bonus episodes that you'll receive a few days later. If you're a spiritual junkie, you're in the midst of awakening, or you're simply curious where you might be in your own spiritual process, check it out and feel free to share with your friends who might be interested too. Do you find that you take on too much in life? That no matter what you do, no matter how you live your life, you seem to take on everything around you. It's so easy to do, right? Life demands a lot of us. We have a lot of responsibility, and the name of the game is getting up every morning to figure out how much money you're going to make, right? So that you can eat and feed your family and do the things in life that you want to do while you're here. But it's really easy to stress out, right? It's so easy to get overwhelmed, especially this time of year. So not only do you have your regular things you need to do, but now the holidays are upon us. And now it's like, I got to buy for all these people, right? Do you ever think we should just stop doing all that? Every year I go, I don't know how I'm going to get all this done. And somehow it happens. But it's always this overwhelming thought in the mind like, oh no, we're here again. I want to hone in on this topic of taking on too much and just really stressing out. Sometimes it seems that that's all that's happening in life. Everyone's just freaking out everywhere, just wearing the burden of so many things at once and just carrying around these heavy loads energetically. I mean, do you do this? I do it. And it happens all the time. And unless you're proactively checking in to see how you're doing underneath all of this, you keep going and going and going until what happens? Eventually you get fed up, you either blow up, right? You either blow up at somebody and go off and then later go, oh no, I shouldn't have done that. Or you get sick. You physically become ill and the body will make you stop. I need to go in bed for a day with a fever and just stop doing what I'm doing. But the real answer is somewhere else to all of this. And our ego mind does everything in its power to make sure we never see this little trick that's sitting within us. So all of our effort and distraction in life is on the outside. So I want to look at this today. I want to go over stressing out over everything and how to detach from work, relationships, and life drama. And it seems that the two areas that this happens the most for people, at least in my own life and people that I know, the two major areas where you start taking on everything are in your work, whatever job or career path you're in, and your personal relationships. These two are huge. They take over a huge chunk of our life. So first, let's go into the work and the job and how it's so easy to become your work. How many of you struggle with this? Where you're literally the job. And you may not want to be the job, but you're doing it. And everything you're doing, you're associating yourself with the work that you do. But are you really what you do? So let's get into that a little bit more. And then second, let's go over personal relationships, because relationships can be wonderful, but they can also be very difficult at times. You can struggle to get along, but you can also take on other people's emotional disturbances Maybe you're taking on the friction that's happening in the relationship, and then you're just sort of holding it in your field, and it's making you feel very overwhelmed and stressed out. So we'll look at work, we'll look at relationships second, and then I want to leave you with three simple things, very simple ideas that you can do to discover inner peace in your life. And I want to use A Course in Miracles as a guide because in all the years that I was struggling in my life, the Course was one of the main things that resonated with me. Not only what its larger message is saying, and for those of you that are familiar with the Course, you know what I'm talking about, but this whole idea that this world is an illusion and that we are so rooted in it and the ego is making us believe it. But there's this other side to us, this spiritual reminder that's sitting in our larger mind that is awaiting us to discover who we truly are, which has nothing to do with a personal self or a personal identity. If you are struggling with feeling overwhelmed and stressed out all the time and you're becoming your job, you're becoming the relationship, then I want you to really listen as we go through this today and see how it can help you pull out of that feeling of needing to absorb everything and taking everything on in your life. How can you step out of it? And I'll leave you with that today as I give you those three simple tools. So let's get started with your job. What do you do in your life for work? I mean, everybody has to make money, or you're contributing to something in your life that earns money. You know, that's just sort of the name of the game of the world. So what is it that you do for money? And do you like your job? Do you like your career path? Are you happy with it? Do you find that you become the role you are? So let's say that you're a doctor or a teacher, or you're a salesperson, or you're a marketing genius, or whatever you do for money. You know, it really doesn't matter. Do you assume the role that you are? Do you think that's who you are? Do you start to identify as your job? And it's just a question to ask, because the more and more you start waking up in life to something larger than yourself, you're going to come across this question, right? Am I what I do in life? Am I the doer? Or am I something else that's sitting behind it? And our ego mind will most certainly tell us that we are the doer, that we're absolutely the teacher, the doctor, the lawyer, the salesperson. Whatever you do in life to earn a living, it's easy to assume that identity and believe that it's who you are. So I'm just asking the question, and I'm asking it for you to ask yourself, is do you do that? Do you think that's who you are? And do you find that you attach to your career? For instance, do you measure your self-worth by what you do in life, by your accomplishments at work, by how much money you make, by how you're seen in the work world? Do you value yourself in that way? Because I think a lot of people do this. I think a lot of people are looking for recognition in their job, and it makes them feel good, right? When you accomplish something or you're earning more money, then you're becoming that, and that's who you believe yourself to be. And the ego mind most definitely believes that that's who you are, and it will do everything in its power to make sure that you know that. Whether you go to a physical establishment or place of work to do your job, or you're at home, it doesn't matter. This is still happening in your mind, that you are that position. When you're home working, if you work from the house or wherever you live, doesn't it seem like you can just work all the time? That you actually might work more and take on the role more, as opposed to somebody who goes in and then leaves the job? Maybe it's easier to leave the job behind if you physically go into a workplace. But some people, my son, for instance, who inspired this show for me because he is struggling with detaching from his job, and he's bringing it home with him, and he's becoming the job even when he's not at work. And I've been talking to him, and he's aware that he's doing it, and he's looking to figure out some different ways that he can pull out of the job. Because I always try to remind him, you know, are you really that? There's more to your life than just the job. But some people have to work 24/7, right? It seems like today you just have to work all the time to make ends meet. Where is the ability to detach from your role as the worker? Where is it? You know, if you don't actually have the time and you physically have to work to make ends meet, how is it that you can pull out of that and find inner peace? And that's what we're going to get into at the end of the show. So work is a big deal. It takes over most of our lives. It's probably the number one priority that we all have until you're retired or you no longer need to work, or maybe you don't work and you do other things. It is a priority for most of us. So I know that most of you listening can relate to becoming the role that you play in your job. And I want to talk about this idea of roles for a minute because it's not just at work. This happens in life where the ego mind is attaching to, you could say, like an archetype. I am the hero, or I am the savior complex, or I'm the entrepreneur or the builder or the creator. There's so many different archetypes that you could play. But the ego wants you to attach to something. That's what it wants. It wants an attachment to something, and then it wants you to give it more focus and attention so that it breathes life. It becomes your identity. And its whole point in doing this is so that you never see that other avenue that's awaiting you to inner peace, because the ego is covering up the spiritual side of your mind. It sounds so easy in theory, right? I mean, you could talk about it like, yeah, I totally get that. I could see why that's a thing. But then to actually do it is a completely different discussion. And it's a whole different type of living than just talking about it. So what I'm hoping by doing this show is that when we discuss these things, you can see them happening in your life. Like you can now see that you are taking on roles in your life, whether it's at work, whether you're a spouse, a husband, a wife, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a significant other of any kind. You're playing that role, whether you're a parent or a child, whether you're the community organizer, whoever it is. You can become all these things. You can become your hobbies. I'm the avid hiker or the mountain climber or the biker or the runner or the yoga practitioner meditator. I'm the traveler, the world adventurer. You see where I'm going? And I'm asking you, is that who you are? Or is it simply what you do while you're here? And these are just things for you to ask yourself and to discover in your own life. Because at some point in all these roles, if you become too attached to them, and if something happens in that role, for instance, like a marriage or a relationship, as we'll get into relationships in a minute, if something goes astray or if something goes wrong, you're devastated when something happens to it. Or let's say your job, you do something at work that's disappointing to your boss, or you own a company and the company fizzles and goes under. It devastates your ego mind, because you've identified with that as who you are. So now what does the ego do? If you fail at something in your job, what does the ego tell you? You're a complete failure, right? You're a loser. You can't do anything. You won't amount to anything. You don't even deserve it at this point because you failed miserably. Ask any successful entrepreneur how many times they failed before they made it. They're going to tell you a lot. So for some, failure is not a stopping point, and they use it to fuel their next venture. But the ego will definitely get in there and tell you that you won't make it. It loves to do that. And to the contrary, like I just mentioned, the ego might also subtly slip in and tell you, you can overcome anything and conquer the world and be the best. So it's playing both sides here, and you can identify with either one of these, positive or negative. I know I've said many times, it doesn't really matter, positive, negative. The ego will still attach to it and own it, become it. That's what it is. So this is something to recognize in your own life, because when you become something, it breeds a whole new energy until there's a problem. Right? Because that's how the ego works. Everything's going along smoothly. We're in the sailboat cruising through the Caribbean. And then all of a sudden we see the dark clouds in the background that are coming in and the hurricane is starting. There were times in my life, I don't know about any of you, where I felt like I was literally living a tsunami just 24/7, So I understand how this operates in the mind. That how you can get caught up in attaching to the hurricane or the tornado of life, instead of, which is where I'm going to point later, is detaching from the roller coaster and learning to ride that wave up and down effortlessly. And you're no longer caring nor attached to the outcome of where it's taking you, whether it's your job or now, as let's get into relationships. Oh, the beauty of personal relationships. Our special relationships in life, as A Course in Miracles uses, are our biggest teachers. That these special relationships that the ego has created, because in the ego's mind, we're all special individual identities, right? This is how we operate in the world as separate bodies. So from A Course in Miracles perspective, and I want to make that very clear, this is not my perspective, this is the Course's teaching, that as individual egos and bodies, we are separating ourselves into these individual people. And in that, we all self-preserve and try to glorify this identity and keep it alive as long as possible. Hence, reincarnation, right? The continuous cycle over and over again of life, of death and rebirth over and over and over again. And you definitely don't have to believe in reincarnation for it to be true, or for it to be happening here. You don't have to believe it. But do you live subtle deaths and rebirths every moment, all the time in your current life? We go through this cycle all the time. So you can relate it in any way that you choose. But these special relationships that the ego creates is really based on needing special attention and special love. It has nothing to do with real love or the love of God or in the Godhead. In the place where God simply is, which is what the Course is referring to when it's speaking of real love, has nothing to do with our personal love relationships, at least from the ego's perspective. The ego wants its special love from a special person. From one other person, it wants the attention and the love from that specific person. So in our lives, we all have that. Whether you're in a relationship now or you've been in a relationship before, or you're wanting to get into a new relationship, it doesn't matter. It's still the same thing. This seeking a special love from someone else, that you're seeking a love outside of yourself, the real love, right, that I'm speaking of, that is of God love, you're seeking it from somewhere else. And that's just what we do. So when you see this, you can become clearer on when you're beginning to attach too much to a relationship or take on somebody else's issues that may not have anything to do with you. Because when we take on other people or we take on the relationship, we lose our connection to the larger mind or the spiritual side, which is the extension of real love. We lose it completely. It's like we just cut the cord and now we're just living in the ego's idea of what a relationship is, which is typically all about me, all about the other person, pleasing another person, gaining something from the other person, getting something from them that I don't think I have. You know what I'm saying? All of these things apply. And they can be difficult because we're human beings and we really wear emotions and feelings on our sleeve, right? The emotions and feelings of that part of ourself can be so large that they're driving our entire relationship. The emotion and feeling can take over everything, and that's where trouble starts a lot, right? It's one thing to share emotions and feelings and be able to work through them. But it's another thing to let them overwhelm and overtake the relationship, so much so that now you're in that stressed out state that I spoke about in the beginning. And now you're dressing up in someone else's emotions and feelings all the time. You're wearing their heavy winter coat now that we're entering winter, and you're putting it on every day. Or you're waking up in misery in the middle of the night, worrying about what's happening in the relationship or your job, right? And you're tossing and turning in these heavy blankets. And again, I'm using all of this as a metaphor, but it's just very heavy and it weighs on you. And now the psyche or the ego mind is becoming all of this. You're identifying now, I'm in a troubled relationship, or I'm in an amazing relationship. Our relationship is doing so well, and you're labeling it as such. Watch how quickly the ego will want to attach to a label of how you're doing. It's like a report card. Do you find you're doing this? Well, I guess I'm doing well today. I'm going to check off excellent. Or I'm doing so bad, I'm going to check off the shitty box at the end. And then after you check that mental box, the ego mind's going to judge you. It's going to pull you into feeling heavier and heavier and taking on more than you need to. So if you find in your life that you are taking on too much, you've got multiple relationships you're managing, there's some turmoil, maybe there's some great things going on, but somebody's struggling somewhere, so you're really paying attention to them and you're pulling their emotion into your own field. And now you're wearing that as you go around, and then you go to work and you've got some drama going on with your boss and all the other people that you're working with. And now you're double whammied, right? You got all of this happening. Now the stress level's rising, right? And then you get a phone call from your mom. And she starts yapping in your ear about something. And now you're taking on some family issue that has nothing to do with you, by the way. But now that's in your field. And then you go home and now you're looking through your social media feed and that's pissing you off and you're taking that on. And then the news media is freaking out about something. And now you're just completely overwhelmed that you're pouring yourself the biggest glass of wine that you can find. But this is life. This is what happens. The ego likes to identify with everything around it. And that's what I'm really getting at here. When we're looking at your career or your job or your personal relationships in life, your mind is going to want to grab a hold of every part of it, identify with it, and then consume you. So much so that you never see the answer that's sitting right inside of you. It's not out there anywhere, but the ego will do its best to do what? Project. It's always going to project outside. It's going to blame your current circumstance or feeling on something else, whether it's the job or the personal relationship. That's why I am the way that I am. That's why I'm feeling this, because of the external. And this is a program in the mind. It's like we don't even know it's there. It's such deep conditioning for millennia, for eons. It's like we're born and the conditioning comes with us. For those of you listening that have had children, and let's say you've had more than one, so you've had at least 2 kids, do you notice in your kids when they come in with a completely different set of struggle, emotion, strength, personality? It's so totally different. It's like, where did they come up with that in about 6 months' time or a year? Or you can watch this and it happens differently for each child, but you can almost see the ego and the conditioning. For some, it's immediate, but at least within the first year. And then definitely by year 3, you've seen it. You can see the whole structure happening. And it varies between each child that you have. And then parents who sit there and say, well, it must be me. My parenting's terrible. Why are my kids all over the place and they're all doing different things? They're so different. It's not always the parenting, although it can be helpful. Kids come in. We all come in with our own set of issues already. And if you've had the opportunity as a parent to see this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And then you live your life with each child differently because they're different. It's very hard to parent all these different people the same because they're totally different. My point being is that the conditioning is just already there. It runs so deep. But as you move through your life and as the awareness within you grows, however that occurs for yourself, whether it just happens spontaneously or you start seeking, you begin to see that there is another element to your mind and your life that is available to you that is now trying to show you that things could be totally and completely different. They could be vastly different if only we take a little bit of time to look. So now I want to shift and get to the heart of the show and the helpful part of the show. And especially as you're going through this time of the holidays where you're probably going to be navigating through a lot of people. If you're out there shopping, a lot of people. But if you're dealing with family, and this is family time of year, maybe if you have struggle there, I hope that this can help you. Not only will it help you right now, but it will help you as you go through your entire life. So now let's talk about 3 simple things. They're very simple ideas that you can do to discover inner peace that's inside of you. This does not require you to pay any money, nor does it require you get on a 6-month waiting list because it's such a popular class that you can't get in. No, this is your own personalized classroom designed just for you. And I love to go to A Course in Miracles with this because that's what it's all about. It's a personalized classroom of inner study. Are there people out there and teachers in the world that can be hugely beneficial? Yes, there are. But does the work have to come from you? Yes. So here are 3 things. Let's get right to it. And they are simple. They're simple conceptually in your mind. So I invite you to whatever you're doing right now, whether you're scrubbing the toilets or you're out on a beautiful walk or you're in your car driving in traffic. I want you to think of these 3 simple ideas to discover inner peace. And this stems directly from what A Course in Miracles is saying. If you find that the text is difficult to understand, I'm going to simplify here for you so that you can just apply it simply and easily. So number 1, I want you to think about the first thing that you need to do more than anything else. The first step required to change everything in your life is to shift your focus inward. Now, the ego doesn't want you to do that. So a battle will be formed. I'm warning you. I'm going to give you the warning. I'm going to give you a disclaimer. And the disclaimer is the ego will not go willingly. So shift inward. And what I mean by that is that the ego mind spends its time in a constant state of projection, meaning everything that it does in this world is to project everything outside of itself. So much so, according to A Course in Miracles, that it's actually projected a world outside that is illusory. But we believe it's true and real because we're living it every day, right? This show is not about the depth of that. It's just a little reminder of what the Course is saying. So the ego is projecting all the time, spitting everything out on the external. So start noticing when you're doing this. Start noticing when you're projecting everything outside of yourself, blaming everything outside of yourself, so that you don't have to shift inward, taking a leap and going inside. It's like you're pulling back. You're getting out of the world and going inside of yourself. That's the very first thing to do. You can do this anytime, any place, during anything that's happening in your life, literally at any moment. So when you shift your awareness and your attention and focus inside of yourself, a vast space is available to you. Whether you know it's there or not yet doesn't matter. The simple fact that you're shifting your attention inward will shine a light on this space. At first, it might be very tiny, and that's okay. Moving your attention inside, there's a place eventually you will discover where time extends forever. It's like an eternity of space. So you're no longer just reacting to the chaos of life, because that's what the ego will program you and want you to do, just constantly react. Well, this is just the way I am. I'm just reacting. I'm going to react over here, going to react at work. I'm going to react in my personal life. And that's just the way it is. And you can certainly choose to live that way. Most of us do for some period of our life. We all do that. When you're tired of that, right? When you're tired of the reactionary state, when you're tired of feeling this heaviness and burden and stress all the time, is when you'll make the jump, which feels monumental at first. To just go inward feels like it's impossible because you're not used to it. You don't know what's in there. This is the true inner journey into the unknown. When you move your attention here, you're now granting yourself opportunity to do what? When you have a vast space that extends forever and time is non-existent, and when you submerge yourself into it, you have a chance to make a decision. You have a beautiful, gifted opportunity to choose. So this is the first thing that I want you to consider, or I want to invite you to try. You certainly don't have to. It's just an invitation. It's like the spiritual side of yourself inviting you into who you truly are. And it's up to you whether you're ready yet to check yes on that RSVP or no, or maybe. Maybe you're in the maybe category. Could be a hard no, right? Like, I get what you're saying. I'm not doing it yet. Totally fine. But the fact that you're listening and you know that it's an option, and that option will be rooted now in your mind. And maybe eventually you'll go, oh, maybe it's time that I shift inward. So that's number 1. Simple concept, right? Very simple idea. And if you have the curiosity to discover what's in there and you're just willing to try, that's all that's needed. Again, no money required, no 6-month waiting list, nothing. It's just curiosity and willingness. The next thing I want you to think about, so number 2, now that you've made the shift inward, it's time to choose your teacher. Are you going to choose your ego or the spiritual side of your mind? So it's simple. Are you going to choose ego or spirit? Well, most of us have been choosing the ego our entire lives. The more you become familiar with how the ego attaches to an identity and consumes itself with the role that you're playing, whether it's your job or your relationships, the more you see that, then the easier it will be to say, oh, okay, that's what that's like. Now maybe I should try choosing another way. So when you're in this larger field of awareness and it's breathing, it's massive. And again, it's difficult to understand this unless you've experienced it yourself. But when you go within and experience this expansive field that's available, time is irrelevant. So something that you're doing in life can be happening exactly as it always does. For instance, let's say you're at work and you're in a meeting and there's lots of information and people are yapping and you're sitting there. You can still participate in your job. You still are doing your life how you always do it. You're still in the meeting. You're still sharing in the meeting. You're giving your 2 cents. But as you're doing that, there's a larger field of awareness that you're now seeing. And when I say seeing, I don't want you to think of this as you are seeing with your eyes, your physical eyes in the world, as you see separation in bodies and whatever you're seeing visually in your eyesight. I'm talking about seeing from a much deeper perspective, that you're seeing with spirit, or as a course says, you're seeing with the Holy Spirit. You're choosing the Holy Spirit as your teacher. So it's not necessarily that you're seeing anything physically different on the outside. It's now that you're choosing to shift into spiritual awareness, which is now coming from a completely different perception. You're no longer perceiving separation like the ego. You're no longer perceiving this special identity at work that needs to be reassured, that needs to get the promotion, that needs to earn more money. That is no longer a concern for your spiritual mind. Even though you still have to live, it's not saying any of that. It's not saying you don't continue to do your life, but now you're going to choose to do it with a wiser teacher. Shifting inward and going into the vast, expansive field of sacred space within you, where time stands still, where judgment doesn't exist, where the connection to more than you think you are is awaiting you, is where you can choose the Holy Spirit. It's where you can choose a different way to be. When you choose spirit, it's like your ticket to sanity, a clear mind and a calm sense of self. The spiritual side is reminding you that nothing you see on the outside, so whatever you're doing at work, and you're doing it, right? It's like you're multitasking. You're doing your job, you're talking on the phone, you're in a meeting, you're getting all of your responsibilities in order. You're doing all of that, but you're now connected to something greater. And it's reminding you that what you see on the outside is not what you think it is. So your investment in the external is not as great. Your investment in your identity as that thing you think you are at work, or that role you're playing as a wife or a mother or father or significant other, is not what you think it is. There's a greater purpose to it. And that greater purpose is to recognize that every single person that you interact with, whether it's at work or home in your personal life, is just like you. You share the same belief in the ego mind or the insane madness, right, of the ego. And you also share the answer, which is the Holy Spirit. The recognition that you're all part of the same wholeness. That's the messenger to home, to real love, to God is. A Course in Miracles would say that God is and nothing else ceases to exist. That might be a scary thought to your ego mind, but think about how liberating and freeing that feels. That there's more to this supposed story that we're living. So you can begin to see that your mind is split. It has a conflict, or at least the ego thinks it's a conflict, but there's two sides going on here. The representative of the world, which is the ego's conditioned mind, and the ego's special relationships, and the ego's special identity, all based on separation from God. And then you have the other side, which is completely and totally different, which is the Holy Spirit or Spirit. And it is the representative of truth with a capital T. It's there to remind you that there's much more than what you think you're holding in your life. There's much more to the burdens that you carry. There's much more that the stress you're experiencing, that you could let all of it go and put it into the hands of Spirit and be lighter and be okay with whatever happens, because you know there's more to this whole story. Your desire to feel whole and peace and love and compassion in your life becomes greater than your need to attach to the identity. It becomes greater than your need to play a role and get something out of that role. You're going to shift from self-gratification of the ego, that anything I do is now needing something in return, to that of being of service to Spirit and extending eternal love and peace to everyone you encounter. This does not mean that you're walking around kumbaya, wearing an orange robe and saying, I'm extending peace and love to you. Remember, it's not about the physical behavior that you're doing. It's about how you're choosing to see inward, who you're choosing as your teacher in your inner life. This is what's so powerful. This does not mean we're going to have a perfect physical reality or a perfect physical world or the perfect job or the perfect relationship. But if you shift inward and choose a different teacher, you'll begin to change everything. And that's all that it takes. So after you think about these two things, the next thing and the most important thing to do is to practice this all the time. You're going, oh no, I don't know if I can do that, right? The only way to discover this inner peace is to do it, is to implement it, is to get curious about what might happen if you actually do it and dive into the unknown and see where it takes you. Because you already know how you're currently living, right? You already know how that's working out. It's making you stressed out. You're taking on too much. You're wearing everybody's energy. You're heavy. You're waking up in the middle of the night because you're worried about it. And now you're ready for something new. You know there's another way. And A Course in Miracles is offering us this very simple teaching. It is not complicated, even though it looks complicated in its 600-page textbook and the workbook and the manual for teachers. There's a lot of information in there. And rightfully so, because the mind is so conditioned that it needs to be told over and over and over again the same thing. It's like repetition over time got us into this mess. So repetition over time can get us out of this mess. So if you learn to implement this practice all of the time, eventually it just becomes your normal life. But if you leave it in your conceptual thought and just listen to the podcast and think, well, that sounds amazing, nothing changes, right? Nothing changes until you actually work on it. And if you can reframe how you're thinking of your job and you're thinking of a relationship that might be in trouble, and put on this hat of discovery, put on this curiosity and willingness hat, you'll be amazed at what you'll discover that's just sitting inside of you. It's going to take some getting used to because it's not normal yet. It's going to take time, and there's plenty of time. There's always time to do this. And I mean it on a very quick level, like every moment of every day there's time. And within that moment, there's that vastness where time doesn't even exist. You could connect to it at any moment you choose. But the reality is, we're human. We're living a life where we have all these things we have to do to survive, to make ends meet, to be with the people that we want to be around, to love each other, to do all of these things that we want in our life. But you can choose to do them with a wiser teacher. You can choose spirit in your life to guide you. You can take a step out of attaching to every little thing and stressing out wherever you are and feeling like you'll never get anywhere, and letting the spiritual nature that's sitting within you drive the car. And the way that you do that is from moment to moment. If you don't do it one day, who cares? Do it the next moment. If you forget and you start reacting and you're going into your ego's saga and drama story, it's okay. The next moment, you shift inward, even if it's just a second. The fact that you're even putting any energy into it is all that matters. So I really hope this helps you. It's 3 simple things that can help you detach from work and relationships and all the drama going on around you all the time. And people like to say that the world is at a weird place right now, and it seems like that, but I have to believe that it's always in a weird place, right? It's always weird here. Look at history, weird. So that isn't going to change, but what is going to change is how you choose to see it perceptually. So these really simple ideas, these 3 powerful things: 1, shifting your attention inward; 2, choosing a teacher. Are you going to choose the ego or spirit? And I'm not telling you who to choose. You choose who you're going to choose, and then watch what happens when you choose the ego or the spirit, because we're all choosing either one or the other on a daily basis. And then lastly, practice, implement it into your life. It's this private little thing you're doing inside of you. Like, you can be having a conversation with someone, whether it's work related or personal, and something pisses you off, right? But you don't have to do anything on the outside. You don't have to say anything. You can just shift inward, see what's available to you, spirit or your ego. Which one are you going to choose? And then choose. It's that simple. And then even if you don't quite understand it all yet, even if you don't get all of the concepts of what A Course in Miracles is saying, it doesn't matter. All that's required is that you look, that you shift inward, and you choose a wiser teacher. That teacher will bring you peace and joy and happiness and inner freedom and liberation. So that when you start walking through your life, you smile a little bit more, you laugh out loud, and you don't take things so personally, because you know that this small identity is really nothing in the larger essence of who you truly are. So stay tuned for next week, because I'm going to do a show that's a little bit lighter, more fun, have some humor, on things that I notice in life where you wonder what happened to common sense, right? So we'll just have a fun, playful show. I know that you all are busy for the holiday season, and I hope that it will help lighten your mood. That'll wrap up today's show. Until next time, I invite you to check out my website at livelikeeden.com. You can sign up for a weekly email reminder when my new podcast and blog comes out, which is every Wednesday. If you are struggling with your own awakening process and you need further assistance or guidance, you can also sign up for a free consult, and I would be more than happy to work with you. If you're enjoying the show, I ask that you share it with others that you think it might benefit. Until next time, thank you so much for listening.